Hello everyone, many thanks for joining this, the fourth webinar in the series on flood and drought management. My name is Gareth James Lloyd and I'm a Senior Advisor at UNEP-DHI Centre, and we're a United Nations Environment Collaboration Centre in the area of freshwater and environment. It's my job to be your facilitator of this webinar today with technical support from Maija, also of UNEP-DHI. This series that we're hosting is a collaboration involving a number of partners, and those include the Global Environment Facility, UN Environment, IWA and DHI, with other valued partners making those additional contributions on content along the way. The overall aim of this series is to give an insight into approaches for addressing flood and drought management issues. And in the series you're going to hear all about the application of tools and methods, as well as the experiences in applying them at different scales. The plan is to get to the agenda in a moment, but before then I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Flood and Drought Management Project. This webinar is an offshoot of the Global Environment Facility project, which is all about developing and disseminating cutting-edge flood and drought management tools. And these tools, although they're being developed in collaboration with three specific geographical settings in Lake Volta, in the Volta Basin, in the Lake Vic Basin, and Chao Phraya River in Thailand, they're meant to have generic applicability. And following development and testing of these tools, they're going to be made freely available online with full instructions and further assistance provided for how to apply them. If you want to learn more about the project, please check out the link after we're done. And as usual, kindly note that there's no www prefix in that web address there. So that was a short advert for the Flood and Drought Management Tools project. Please take a look. I'm sure you'll find it interesting, and you can let us know if you want more information. So today we're very pleased to have two experts with us. They're new to the series, but they're going to be sharing their knowledge and experiences with us on water safety planning. And we're going to begin with a presentation from Mr. Kizito Masinde from the International Water Association, or IWA, and Kizito will be giving us an overview of water safety plans. And following Kizito, I'm very pleased to say we have Mr. George Odero of KIWASCO, and that's the Kisumu Water and Sewerage Company in Kenya. And George will be sharing some of his challenges, successes and lessons learned in water safety planning in Kisumu. Each presentation is going to be taking about 10 to 15 minutes. The plan is to allow for 1 or 2 questions immediately after each presentation. Just to pick up on anything immediate, any immediate questions or issues, and also of course to break the presentations up a little. We'll be allowing some space for additional questions at the end, and that's where you need to send us, you the participants need to send us whatever questions you have by using that grey box on the right hand side of your screen. If you look through, you'll see a little questions tab. If you drop that down, you can type your question in there and we'll do our best to pick up on that. Before moving on, I should also mention that all these presentations, the slides and the webinar recordings from the whole series are made publicly available on YouTube and via various websites, including the UNEP-DHI.org website, and in a few days you'll also be able to get it on the Flood and Drought Management Tools webpage. Without further ado, I'd like to ask Maija to pass control over so we can begin with the first presentation.
Thank you, Gareth. Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar on water safety planning. My name is Kizito Masinde. I'm a programs officer at the IWA regional office in Nairobi. I'm going to give a brief overview of the water safety planning process. As you may know, WSP is quite lengthy and the basic training takes at least a number of days, but I will attempt to rapidly highlight the entire program in the next about 10 minutes. Just for your information and following up on what Gareth mentioned under the Floods and Droughts Management Tools project, in the project we are working at basin and utility level, providing online tools to help in the preparation and planning for floods and droughts. At the utility level, we are working with utilities to develop tools that support water safety planning, because this is the process that is used to ensure water security and safety. And of course, for more information, please visit the link that is provided. So, water safety planning is a comprehensive risk assessment and risk management approach that encompasses all the steps in the water supply. And these are from the catchment through treatment, distribution, storage, and to the consumer. The unique thing with the WSP as a management system is that it is proactive as opposed to reactive. And this is achieved by having a very good knowledge of the supply system and being able to identify where problems might occur, and also putting barriers and management systems in place to stop any problems before they even occur. WSP also makes sure that all parts of the water supply system are working properly and in harmony. Now, WSP is not a new concept. It actually pulls together well-established features and standards of international best practice. For example, it borrows from the hazard analysis and critical control point principles. And it is not a plan in form of a document to be developed, but it has to be implemented. And that means that it is also not just a one-time exercise. And most important, WSP is not additional workload for suppliers, but it is exactly what they are supposed to be doing. The aim of a WSP is to consistently ensure the safety and acceptability of a drinking water supply. And when talking about the safety of drinking water, we mean that it is health-driven. Here we need to keep in mind that still a large number of people lack access to safe water. And even in highly industrialized countries, there are still sometimes major problems with drinking water quality. And a recent case is the Flint water crisis in Michigan. This tells us that traditional ways of ensuring water quality are not sufficient. Now, the water safety plan approach has it has 11 modules, and usually we begin with the preparation phase, which is the assembling of the team, and then of course the system assessment, which has 5 modules, then monitoring, which has 2 modules, management and communication, and then the feedback. We will start with assembling the team. Now, assembling the team involves putting together individuals from the utility, and this may include managers, engineers, water quality control staff, and in most cases you involve people from a wider group of stakeholders. Now, the whole idea is to get an experienced multidisciplinary team that understands the components of the system and is well placed to assess the risks that may be associated with each component of the system. Sometimes something to note is that the WSP team is not just for the water quality department, but it should involve all the parts of the utility. The next step is to describe the water supply system, and here you aim to provide sufficient information that will help you understand the subsequent water quality risk assessment, and also to identify where the system is vulnerable to hazardous events. The result is that you come up with a detailed, up-to-date description of your water supply system, and you get to understand the quality of water that is currently being provided by the utility. You are also able to identify the different users and uses of the water. Here you take note of any special or sensitive users for water, for example, if you have hospitals around. Now, in describing the system, it is important to come up with a detailed flow diagram. A good flow diagram will greatly facilitate the identification of hazards and setting of controls. And this is because it helps the team to identify the pathways by which hazards can be transferred to consumers, and two, to identify key points on the flow diagram where control of the water quality is necessary. If the system is complex, the team should consider creating diagrams at 2 or 3 levels. For example, the first level can have a system overview, which is basically a general process flow diagram. And then the second level, the diagram will include system details, for example, a schematic of the water treatment plant, as you can see on the screen. The next step is with identification of hazards and hazardous events and assessing the risks. And here the objective is to identify all hazards and hazardous events that could result in the water supply getting contaminated or compromised. The other objective is to take note of all potential biological, physical, and chemical hazards associated with each component. For example, the microbial contamination, as you can see in the example. The step requires a technical understanding of the various aspects of collecting, treating, and distributing water, and an appreciation of pathways that lead to contamination. It therefore needs to be done in an inquisitive environment where you ask questions like what could go wrong and where. The best way to get answers to those questions is to use site visits and inspections and to analyze the detailed flow diagram. Desk studies of historical data are also useful. Here the team should endeavor to define and describe specific hazardous events that show the causes of the hazard, and this helps the team to achieve a more precise control measure or intervention that is specific to the event and therefore has a greater chance of addressing that specific hazard. Once the hazard has been identified, the team assesses the risk particular to each of the hazard, either through a qualitative approach or through a semi-quantitative approach, and these examples can be found in the WSP manual. Next is the determination and validation of control measures and their reassessment and prioritization of risks. A control measure is just any action or activity that can be used to prevent or eliminate a hazard or hazardous event or reduce it to an acceptable level. And control measures can take the form of either preventing contaminants from getting access to the water or removing hazards from the water, and this is typically what a treatment plant does, or inactivating pathogens in the water, or maintaining the quality of the water during the distribution. What we get from the step is an identification of the controls in place, a validation of the effectiveness of the controls, and also the identification and prioritization of insufficiently controlled risks. The fifth stage involves developing, implementing, and maintaining an improvement plan. Now, an improvement plan is an action plan for new or future operational controls or any other improvements that WSP team deems fit. It is usually required due to the absence or ineffectiveness of the existing control measures, as the WSP team may have found out, and it is based on the prioritized risks. Some of the things to be included in the plan are the specific action to be undertaken, the responsible party, the due date, and the budget. Consideration of the resource constraints help the team to determine what the ideal short, medium, and long-term priorities are. As we can see, the plan is an iterative process involving the development, implementation, evaluation, amendment, and then back to the development of the plan at the review of the WSP. After the plan, the WSP team defines how it will monitor the control measures, and monitoring of the controls points is essential for supporting risk management by demonstrating that the control measure is effective and that if a deviation is detected, that actions can be taken in a timely manner. Therefore, this step helps the team to identify and define operational monitoring that includes operational limits, and also to establish procedures which demonstrate that the controls are working as planned. And if these are not being met, then you establish corrective action. Step 7 of the WSP approach is the verification of the effectiveness of the WSP, and here the team aims to build a body of evidence that water produced by the water supply system is compliant. The team also confirms that the WSP is being implemented in practice as was intended. The output of the step is to have procedures that verify that the WSP is working effectively and that water that is being delivered to the customers will meet the health-based targets the team has set. Actions involve compliance monitoring, consumer satisfaction, surveys, and auditing. Preparing management procedures is the 8th step, and the step ensures that people and processes have adequate management procedures for normal operations, that is SOPs. They have procedures for incident conditions and for emergency situations. The step also ensures that there is adequate support for staff and processes to keep the operations of the WSP smooth. The WSP team is then required to develop supporting programs as the 9th step, and this may include such programs as training and awareness, research and development, and many others. The WSP team needs to note that some of the programs may already be in place, and many times they are actually in place, but the teams forget or they overlook them, not considering them as important elements of the WSP. To ensure that this does not happen, we have 3 steps in the development of supporting programs. 1, you review what is needed. 2, you revise any existing programs, after which you go to step 3, which is the development of new programs as may be needed. The final steps are 2 and take care of the WSP review and feedback procedures, and the modules are Module 10, planning and carrying out periodic review of the WSP, and also Module 11, which is revising the WSP following an incident. Now, a WSP can quickly be out of date, and this may happen because of changes either in the catchment, in the treatment, or in the distribution process. Sometimes there might also be revised procedures or changes in staff or in stakeholders. The objective of these steps is therefore to ensure that the WSP is up to date and it continues to be appropriate to the needs of the water utility and the stakeholders. You also need to review the WSP after incident situations to take into account lessons learned and changes made. Overall, you therefore need to periodically review the overall plan and learn from experiences and new procedures as may come. That's all in a nutshell, and I would just like to acknowledge the WHO and IWA for the materials I used to prepare these slides, and all of them can be accessed at the WSP portal as shown on the link. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Many thanks for that, Kizito, and thanks for covering such a lot of ground in a short time. I think you did a great job. Before I give you a couple of questions, I'd just like to once again encourage people to use the written questions tab over on the right-hand side. I should probably have also added at the beginning of the webinar that unfortunately we can't have an open mic question and answer session. I think we're more than 85 people on the webinar right now, and so as I'm sure you can appreciate, it's a little bit difficult to handle verbal exchanges, but please send us your questions and we'll do our best to address them either on the webinar here, or we will of course be able to follow up afterwards directly with you. So Kizito, a quick question for you. Please could you tell us what are the benefits of water safety planning to utilities in the face of floods and droughts, in your opinion?
Yeah, as we said, WSP is a proactive management approach, and so of course when you are having incidents of floods and droughts, they are bound to impact on the utility. For example, you might find that the water quality changes, or even the quantity either reduces or increases depending on whether it's a flood or drought, or your infrastructure gets impacted upon negatively. And so water safety planning, when you go through the process, it helps you to actually look at these kind of hazards that you might face within the utility and put in control measures so that when these extreme events happen, they do not adversely affect your utility. So that's basically why WSP is quite important, for example, when it comes to those extreme events.
Thanks, Kizito. Good answer, and great to see some more questions coming in. We're going to be picking up on those, at least the ones for Kizito, towards the end. I'd like to now ask Maija to pass the presentation over to George, Mr. George Odero. By way of introduction, or by way of flow of this webinar. So Kizito has kindly given us the more theoretical side, and now George will give us his experience in terms of water safety planning in action.
Good afternoon. Can you see my presentation now?
Yeah, I think we'll run with that, George. It looks good. Please proceed.
Okay. So I'm George Odero, Water Safety Plan Team Leader, Kisumu Water and Sewerage Company in Kenya. And I want to share with you our experience of implementing, developing and implementing a water safety plan in Kisumu Water, which is a utility in the western part of Kenya. I'm going to share with you experiences that we learned and lessons learned, and maybe suggest a way forward on maybe that can help us improve it for better development and experience in future. On the background, we had a WOP, a water operator partnership, which was signed between Kisumu Water, National Water and Sewerage Company of Uganda, the Ginger plant, and Mwanza Water and Sanitation Authority in December 2012. There are two objectives: was to help us develop the water safety plan, and this was to be done through peer-to-peer support. There were site visits, and this helped the team to enrich the documents and to learn from each other how to develop and implement a water safety plan. We are very lucky that IWA got some money and facilitated the training of the team members, and this also gave a very big boost for the development of water safety plan. Then I have to say that the objective was met because all the utilities had water safety plan developed and implemented. We followed up the level modules as Masinde talked earlier, using the WSP manual. And the first thing that we did was to form the team. The team had different people with different skills at all the stages of water supply. We had engineers, we had chemists and scientists, we had an accountant, we had a customer care person in the team, we also had the human resource person at the administration in the team to make the team multidisciplinary and to make the team effective for our objective. We also identified the stakeholders that we had to work with. The team was formally appointed by the CEO and released to the entire staff, and we were set to go. Then we arranged very many site visits to carry out hazard identification, and then we also benefited from some desk studies based on what was there in the utility, the drawings, and other historical data that were useful to us. Then we did the system description. We have 2 water supplies, which we did different descriptions and included in one document for ease of implementation. Then there are also a series of sensitization of staff members to help them understand the new concept and to ensure that they effectively participate in the implementation. The stakeholders were also contacted, and this was a bit challenging at the start because the list was so long, but we later realized that it is important that we contact few core stakeholders and then encourage others to come on board at a later date, because carrying the team on at one go was very, very, very challenging, as I talk about in challenges that we experienced. Then For us, in the implementation of the plan, when the plan was ready, we ensured that we integrated the plan into the normal work plan of the organizations. And this will help in the getting budgets to help in the implementation process. And to ensure that everybody had a buy-in, we included into the targets of everybody so that everybody's balanced scorecard and an element of implementing what was in the water safety planning. So this one made everybody to take the whole exercise of implementing the water safety planning seriously. And that has been continuous, so that all the things that we do that are in our plan is in the normal day-to-day, and everybody is appraised on them. IWA also organized an external audit to just in 2015, in May, just to take stock of what we've done so far. And the audit findings and recommendation also help us to improve further the development of and the implementation of this plan. And this also made us easy to have the top management to have look at what is going on. Because from that point, even the internal process like internal audit and risk management also took as part of their job in following up on the implementation of the water safety plan as their all normal day-to-day operations. I think it also helped us because we put all the hazards that were identified in the overall organization's risk registers. So this water safety plan document is an annex of and also a part of the organization risk register. So this one makes the whole implementation process a success because now there's a lot of buy-in in the organization. So this one also makes sure that budgets are allocated and things that are to be procured or implemented in the year are done in time. So that is the brief of what we've done so far. I know a lot has been done, but I've tried to summarize them so that we know highlights of what we did. All these things happen because there were challenges. One of the challenges was that getting the team members to participate in all the sessions was difficult because most of the co-members were managers and also leading other processes. So there were a time when there were competing tasks. So some members could miss other sessions and then catch up later. This was proved to be very difficult because at the beginning where there was a lot of work of field visit, a lot of work to be done. So that was a bit challenging. And of course, when we started, some members are not trained, and you realize that getting these things done on time was also challenging. But after training and doing it more and more, the team members got the gist of it and made it a bit easier for them to go through the difficult and tedious tables in the water safety plan document. And then, as I said earlier, getting stakeholders to be involved was a bit difficult because most of them actually don't understand the concept of water safety planning, and they wanted to know what is it that they're going to get when they partner with us. But after a bit of meeting and we had some chemistry going, what I can call the core stakeholders bought in the idea and even supported. So that one is one thing that I can say was a bit challenging, but we were trying to get it over because now more players are now getting interested. Even the bigger players like big organizations like UNICEF and other NGOs, county government are now supporting water safety planning. So that is one thing that I have to say is a challenge that we were working very hard to go around. And then you realize that, as Kizito also mentioned, there are a lot of staff changes. So when a staff joins in, for him to get on board and have the right skills like others, it's a process. This sometimes slows the whole implementation and affects smooth continuity. So this is one area that we've done, and we've talked to the HR people to ensure that when somebody comes in, we also sensitize them on what we do, and water safety planning is one of them. That one is to deal with that challenge of continuity and also staff movement. Then there is a huge financial requirements to implement some upgrade plans. Some involved maybe talking to other players, and this one now makes it very difficult. So some upgrade plans have not been implemented fully, some have been implemented fully. Then there's a bit of where you have to implement other partners like the Water Service Board, and we have very little control or influence over them. So we must exercise patience and consistency to ensure that we continuously engage them. But that progress has been made, but at the beginning it was rather slow. Now I have to say that on lesson learned, as I mentioned earlier, that if you do continuous staff sensitization, especially the ones that are joining in, then the continuity of the water safety plan becomes useful to the organization. What also done is that we are trying to build capacity of internal auditors of other programs like QMS to also to be able to execute a water safety plan audit effectively. So that's what we're implementing right now, so that we have a team of other people who are not in the team who understand water safety planning and can effectively audit the implementation of water safety plan. So that's one lesson that we learned that we are working on to ensure that water safety planning becomes a reality and becomes a useful tool for us. And then I need to classify these stakeholders. Now that we worked with them, there are others that we can call core ones. Then we bring them on board and then bring the rest. Because bringing them all at once is very difficult and sometimes can slow down the process. So that's one thing that we learned, that to go around the stakeholder engagement challenge is that we need to just classify them and then have the chemistry on the one that we call the core in the implementation of water safety planning. Now, since water safety plan is still an annex of the organization risk management register, we are planning to fully integrate it, because water safety plan in itself is a very useful tool for managing risk all over. But since the other risk register had been there before water safety planning, we are trying to integrate them so that we have one document, so that we manage our risks, be it business risk, be it risk in the water catchment, risk in the treatment, and manage it entirely in one tool. So that's what we're working on with other players and the staff and other managers in the institution to make it easy and to integrate it so that we can work and add value to us as a utility. Buy-in is also important by staff at all levels. At first, some managers maybe never understood they thought that maybe water safety plan is for quality staff. But now, with all series of sensitization and trainings, they realize that water safety planning is a useful tool in managing the organization's operations overall. Because if, for example, water supply isn't affected, the entire operation of the utility is affected. You cannot build, you cannot read meters, you cannot collect. So if water quality is good and is consistent, then the entire operations also improves. So that buy-in and is very important, so that everybody understands that everybody has a role to play in water safety planning and for the supply for water that meets the customer's expectation at all times. Thank you. That is all in our experience. Maybe I can exercise and wait for some questions, if any. Thank you.
Yes, many thanks for that, George, and please don't run away, because we do have actually quite a lot of questions to get through, and we're going to get our best, do our best to do that. Maija, if I could just ask you to hand over the rights of presenter to me. Thanks. Then we will... Yeah, we'll move on to the audience questions. George, if you could make sure your mic is open. A very quick question for you, just to get the ball rolling. And that's about the external stakeholders. You talked a lot about involving them, you know, the importance of identifying them. But in your experience, how do you keep them engaged through the whole water safety planning process? Can you say a few words about that from your experience?
Yes, thank you, Gan. That proved to be a challenge. What we've budgeted for as a utility is that we need one way of getting them involved is to have a session with them and have a brief of the status as at periodic updates and periodic meetings. So, as Kizito also said, that water safety plan is a document that changes very, very fast. I'll give you an example. Recently, we had a problem with the water hyacinth in the lake. The stakeholders have to get on board. You have to discuss, because there's a new risk, And then with the time, there will also be challenges of the water supply. So we realize that if you explain that because of the activity in the catchment, there's a problem in the supply, then the stakeholders will come in and discuss on how we can actually manage that risks. So as a utility, there are two things we've done. One, we've opened a communication channel so that if there's anything that we can do that affects water quality, the core stakeholders and others, communication is done frequently and effectively. Number two, we arrange for periodic meetings with the stakeholders where we discuss the entire water safety plan and the current status, the current threats. If there's any other that they need to include and to be looked at, we discuss it in that session. That is why how we have been able to engage the stakeholders. Because if you look at even the other source, the river source, the quantity is a problem. So if the quantity is a problem, is sometimes in the dry spell, the quantity drops. So we need to talk to other stakeholders saying we are going to drop production because the river is drying up. And what can we do to ensure that there's a sustained operation in this water plant? So we realize that those sessions where we have a meeting that is organized and where we have a platform where we talk to all these stakeholders and get their levels and get their views critically, makes it very difficult, make it easy rather, and possible for us to engage them in a organized and systematic and continuous manner. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, George. And Kizito, I hope you're still there. If you could unmute your microphone and let me know when you're ready. I have a quick question for you.
I'm ready.
Okay. At what scale is water safety planning applied both in theory and in practice? Could you say a few words on that? Are you there, Kizito? Have we lost you? Maybe I could pose the same question to George. Are you there, George?
Yes, I'm
Hello,
there.
Gareth.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we have Kizito back. Are you there?
Yes. Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Are you able to answer the question? Did you hear it?
I
Should
actually,
I repeat it?
kindly repeat it, please.
Right. At what scale can water safety planning be applied, both in theory? What's the theory and what's the practice? What is it typically applied at? What scale? Is it basin or is it more localized?
Well, generally it is localized to the utility. But in theory, it's something that actually is applicable basin-wide, depending on how far the reaches of the utility go. So, for example, if the catchment of the utility where it draws its raw water is quite wide, then definitely the utility has to apply that WSP to the entire catchment. And so it can go to as far as basin-wide, although practically many times it's just implemented within the utility.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Also, Kizito, what typically drives a utility to get involved in water safety planning and commit to water safety planning process, also financially, because as you said, I mean, it's if you, of course it's scalable, but obviously there's a cost involved. What drives them to get to embark on this?
Yeah. As I mentioned to begin with, is that there's still a lot of challenges in providing not just the quantities of water, but qualities of water in many places. And because of the challenges the utilities face, they realize the benefits that come with WSP, and that involves a clearer understanding of the roles and responsibilities of everybody who is working within the utility. They are also able to prioritize on the limited resources that they have. So through the risk assessment, they are able to know which are the priority risks they need to be dealing with. And because of that, because they are proactive, then they are able to cut the costs. As we know, trying to plug something is always much more difficult than avoiding it well in advance. They are also able to improve an understanding of the water supply system, the entire water supply system. And as you heard from George, it's easy now for them to, WSP provides them a forum in which they are able to engage their stakeholders. And we know that stakeholders are very important when it comes to operations of a utility. So when the utilities already realize these kinds of benefits they are going to accrue from WSP, then it becomes easy for them to start the implementation process.
Thank you. Thank you. Good answer. George, if I might come back to you, please.
Yes.
George, in the situation in Kisumu, who took the lead institutionally in starting up the water safety plan? Was it the yourselves, the utility, or was it the local government that pushed you to do it, or was it private partners?
To answer that, it is us as a Kisumu Water that we took a decision that we have to change the approach of handling water quality and water supply in Kisumu. We just brought on board the other authorities because we needed them in the other development and implementation. And I also came in with another proposal which was well received of now sharing experiences with the utilities that share the lake, and that is in Uganda and Tanzania. So it is us who came out and said we need to change the approach of managing water supply. And that one has worked for us, because before we were afraid of even customers, or rather very, very aggressive and very ruthless authorities, because they didn't understand what goes through the treatment plant. They didn't understand what their actions lead to us. So right now, even with the local authorities, when they're doing roads, we have a way of talking to them, saying that if they did damage our pipes, it compromises on the quality of water supply. So if there's anything that they need to do, then they have to talk to us. And WSP has helped us to break those barriers so that everybody now talks about the same thing: supply of water that meets the requirements and the customer expectation at all times. So it is us who led, because it's us who knows where the shoe pinches more, being the leader.
Yeah, many thanks for that, George. If I might just hop quickly back to Kizito. A question for you here. Let me just read. As far as water utilities are concerned, what is the role of the end users in water safety planning? What is the role of end users in water safety planning?
Well, the end users, I could think of two roles. One, since they are the ones who actually receive the water that a utility produces, then they can give very good feedback to the utility if it's actually providing the quality, an acceptable level of water that they can use or not. And two, in the supply lines, in some areas where you have, for example, high non-revenue water, if you have a good relationship with end users, then you will realize that the non-revenue water drastically reduces, because then you have a lot of cooperation from the end users. They will not go around puncturing your pipes or trying to get water from the system without properly going through the procedures. So those are the two main ways in which the end users are very important to the utilities under the water safety planning.
Many thanks for that. There's some very good questions here, and I must be honest, I'm a little uncertain about who to direct them towards. I think I will direct this next one to George, because it will be interesting to hear how his on-the-ground experience is in this area. George, are you there?
Yes. I'm there.
George, what meteorological data do you have access to, and how do you use this data for water safety planning, if you use it at all?
Yes, thank you very much, Guy. Because of water safety planning and implementation, we found it necessary that we get to ask for this data. So as we speak now, the meteorological department sent us weekly forecast for rainfall, for example, and the weather forecast. So every week, every month, so that we can plan very well. We know very well that our sources of water sometimes depend heavily on rainfall. And if there's drought, then we need to prepare ourselves, prepare our systems, and prepare our customers if there's going to be a change in the water supply. So we, through the implementation of water safety planning, we realized that we needed this data. And this data religiously is sent to us every week from the meteorological department so that it can help us plan our work very well. So that is one thing that helped us, especially after implementing water safety plan and realized there's some challenges, and this data is very much useful for us, for our planning. And that's why I'm also hoping that maybe if we get more tools that can predict even more and get this data early enough, then we can actually plan our services. Just to paint a picture of Kisumu, we supply water from two sources, and one is dependent on the two extremes affects them. If there's drought, you have to use the lake more, and you have to pump more, and then use more energy and other cost. If they have more water from the river, then there are two things that are going to happen. The quality will change, that will affect our process, and of course the volume will go up. So for preparation, we get forecast from the meteorological department every week. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. And another question for you, George, specifically. Do you use water safety planning as a tool to prioritize and justify investments? And how does that work within your organization if you work that way?
Yes, actually that's the way we are doing it. For example, if there were upgrade plans, for example, in a treatment plant, I put what is required in the procurement plan and subsequently the budget and in my work plan. So at the end of the day, I'll be asked that you are supposed to do this specific assignment. Have you done it? Were you facilitated? So we use water safety planning for procurement and planning for budgeting. This makes the water safety planning a very useful tool for our operations, because if we don't do that, then we won't get money to implement anything. So we are using water safety planning to help us in the budgeting, and that will help us to implement it better and improve our services.
Thank you very much, George, and thank you very much, Kizito. I'm afraid that's all we have time for in terms of questions right now. As mentioned, this was the fourth in the series on flood and drought management tools. Right now, the next one we have planned is all about basin planning and how to deal with climate change challenges in basin planning. And as you can see here, that's scheduled for April the 25th, 2017, so not so long to go. If you mark your calendars already and join us for that one, that would be great. If you have any burning questions or issues, please send us an email. Those questions that we've received already, we're going to do our best to get back to you on those. It will either be Maija, myself, or George, or Kizito, or other colleagues if we're not able to respond. So I'm sorry if we didn't have a chance to get to a question that you've asked there. As mentioned, we're going to do our best to get these recordings up on the website as quickly as possible. Where are we up to now? Wednesday. So by Monday next week, my best guess is that you'll be able to check out the recordings on the websites I mentioned earlier. And we're always looking to improve the quality of our work. And as you exit this webinar, you'll receive a questionnaire. So if you take a couple of minutes to respond and give us some feedback, we'd very much appreciate that. Finally, please allow me to conclude today's session by thanking the presenters for taking their time to share their knowledge with us and experiences. And I'd also like to thank you, the participants, for taking the time to join in. I wish you all a very good morning, afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much.